those guys who opened Harvard graduated from Cambridge. They were from England.
However, Radcliffe College was still.
Squirrels are running around. But you should know that they probably won't let you walk inside because they're for students. That second oldest building at Harvard had survived. They're restoring it now. They were set on fire and then new buildings were built. The statue, the John Harvard statue, is also called the Statue of Three Lies.
12 houses.
That's not John Harvard. Harvard's right here. I've passed MIT and now got Harvard. And here is a sign hanging here. Harvard Station, 1983. This is what the subway looks like, nothing supernatural. And now let's go see Harvard. There's a sign right out front that explains a few things. In 1636, £400 were given to establish a school. There wasn't even a Harvard name back then, and the place where it was formed was called Newtown. A simple name, like what town do you live in? I live in Newtown. Kind of boring, right? They decided to call it Cambridge. Why would you complicate it? Just like Cambridge in England. Why is that? Because a little secret, some of the guys who opened like Harvard graduated from Cambridge and they were from England. 2 years later this place was called Cambridge, and in the 1639 they formed a college out of a school in Cambridge. So we're in Cambridge right now. I came from Boston. Who doesn't know or doesn't understand, that's how it is. There are actually many cities in America that have borrowed the names of European cities, and not just European cities. We enter through the main historic gate. This is where Harvard Yard begins. It might be appropriate here to show an overhead view or a map to have an idea of the spot of the university. This is the historic part. This is where Harvard was formed. This is where its oldest and most iconic buildings are. I'll tell you about them. We're walking around the Harvard Yard. This is the main area. There are guided tours on Harvard campus and Harvard Yard. The tour guides are usually undergraduate or graduate students. There is some non-graduates. You can sign up for these tours online to walk around here. They'll tell you what's going on here, but you should know that they probably won't let you walk like inside because they're for students only. I've been in some of the buildings. I was here 4 years ago, and yeah, back then I've been to some of the buildings, but it's mostly like non-educational ones, kind of public buildings.
John Harvard statue. So let's cross over to the sign on the university president and Radcliffe College. That the separation was achieved.
You go straight in the main gate. That's where I would just broadcast. There is a building like this. This is where the second building stood. So originally the first one was built, and then the second one, Harvard Hall, was built. And what was it made of? Wood. The second building was built in 1672. Now, less than 100 years later, it was burned down, and then they built a stone building here. This is normal situation, by the way, that many buildings, many cities around like 17th and 18th centuries, they were set on fire, they burned, and then new buildings were built. And it's also happened with Harvard. It was burnt too. By the way, let me remind you that Harvard, you already know it because you've watched my Harvard episodes, right? Harvard initially was formed when America, like wasn't even here. I mean, the Puritans came. They founded everything here with Massachusetts authorities. Yeah, there was no America yet. There were colonies. America was formed in 1776. There were colonies, and there were a lot of wars, so there were Indians feuding among themselves, they were feuding with the English were feuding with the Dutch, and so on. Everything was burning, bullets were flying, well, a fun time in a nutshell. And yeah, you're a Harvard University student, and you're studying what? Well, mostly Latin, and some sort of religious teachings, something like that. But I want to start by saying that Harvard is full of mystery myths, and even this place starts out with a lie. You heard it right, guys, when you're in the center and you're looking at the statue of the founder of Harvard, you're not looking at John Harvard. John Harvard statue. It's not him at all. What do you think? Surprised? That's first of all. Second of all, he was not the founder. That's a good one, don't you think? John Harvard came to America after the founding of this institution under a different name. Now I'll tell you all about it. Who is he, this mythical John Harvard, after whom the most famous American uni is named? He's an Englishman, lived only 30 years, was born in 1607 in London, and what possessed him to go from London across the Atlantic to the British colony to the Indians 400 years ago? John Harvard was the son of a butcher and of the daughter of a cattle merchant and alderman of Stratford-on-Avon. I've told you just one fact about Harvard, but look how much is hidden here. He was the son of a butcher, well, that's kind of a ancestry, but have you heard at least one business coach saying, "Be butcher"? Butchers are rich people, but some centuries ago this profession could lead to a huge fortune. So, meat. In the 17th and 18th centuries in England and the United States, butchers could be very wealthy people. Meat was a valuable product in those days, and those who sold it and processed it were getting a lot of revenue. Imagine you're a butcher in London or Massachusetts colony. Your customers are rich people. Your shop is the center of attraction for the wealthy. Of course, in order to become wealthy, you had to be not just good at your profession, but also to have business skills and know how to create a connection. Want an example? Widener family. Eleanor Widener is famous for her generous donation to build a library at Harvard. She was from a family of butchers. Her ancestors owned a lucrative meat sales business, which allowed them to accumulate considerable wealth. The Widener family supported the arts, science, and education, and had one of the most valuable art collections in the US. So yeah, guys, butchers could be rich people. Are you surprised? Harvard, of course, is full of history. Every building here represents like something, has some kind of history. It's not just some buildings, like math or art faculty. Its library, for example, has an amazing history. It's not just a library, it's a memorial, which means it's a built-in memory of Harry Elkins Widener. He died on the Titanic, was a member of the wealthiest Widener family, and after he died, his mother donated a bunch of money. It would be around $80 million now to have this library built right here. It was 100 years ago, it was built after the Titanic sank, and of course the number of books was smaller. Now the library has expanded considerably. And so this library, it's not just the upper floors, it's also the lower floors. The library has a total of 10 floors, 6 of which are over the ground and 4 are underground. The next interesting fact in my statement is that John Harvard's grandfather was an alderman. What does that mean? Who is an alderman? It's like old and man. An old man? It cannot be that simple, right? Or it can. An alderman is a member of the municipal council, could be a city judge in some cases. In short, it's an official. And one more point, the town where the grandfather worked in, Stratford-upon-Avon, is the town where Shakespeare was born. Shakespeare was 36 years old when John Harvard was born, and yes, they lived at the same time. And what's even more interesting is that Shakespeare's father was working with John Harvard's grandfather. John's father and most of his siblings, 9 in all, died from the plague in 1625. His mother remarries and John is sent to Emmanuel College, Cambridge University in 1627. He lived in Cambridge for 10 years and graduated with a bachelor's degree, then got a master's degree and got married. And then he immediately went to America with his wife to conquest it. But it wasn't America back then. Small spoiler, I went to Cambridge recently, and a series of episodes about this town and the university is going to come out really soon. There I'll show you some Harvard-related sites, there is a new video coming up, so subscribe and watch my channel. Squirrels are running around. I'm thinking, what's clicking? A lot of squirrels everywhere on campus. Something cracking. You know, like click, like that, very loud. And that's the squirrels cracking the nuts, just like everywhere. Look, they put a sticker right here on the door. Don't leave your electric scooters. Well, it says this device in a picture. It doesn't just say electric scooter. Just do not leave this device. Don't leave this thing at the door, like in the holes. Don't leave it on the road, because it looks like students are dropping them. But why drop it when you've got a bike parking lot right here? You park your bike and you walk into your house. Look at this entrance. And we continue. Early 17th century. London at that time was the place to excel. Tens of thousands of ambitious men and women came here, bringing not only their aspirations but also their illnesses. As I said earlier, John's father and most of his siblings died, and later his mother dies too. What does that mean for John? Big inheritance. He uses the money to pay for his tuition and later goes to New England. Why there? In Cambridge, in those days, they studied theology and Latin. John Harvard, like other Cambridge graduates, clearly wanted to take part in the campaign to reform the Church of England. But it was a dangerous thing to do. England was then on the brink of a civil war. Many Cambridge graduates go to the New World to establish their clergy without any persecution. John Harvard dies of tuberculosis just 1 year after his arrival in America. During this time, he becomes a church teacher and one of the ministers. Back to the monument. There is no photograph, painting, or physical description of John Harvard, so it's impossible to see anywhere what he looked like. Not a single surviving record documents his date of birth or the exact date of his arrival in Massachusetts. There is also no record of why he joined the Puritan ministry and immigrated to the New World. No information as to why he bequeathed most of his fortune to a small college, which admitted its first students just weeks before his death. So, who was the model for the monument if no one knows what Harvard looked like? Nearly 2.5 centuries later, Daniel Chester French creates his famous statue, and Sherman Hoare, an undergraduate and later graduate student, set as a model for the head of John Harvard. Well, and as we've already realized, John Harvard was not the founder of the university. The institution was founded 2 years earlier by city officials, but since he gave twice as much money than the city government, it was decided to rename the school in his honor. The statue, the John Harvard statue, is also called the statue of three lies. The first lie is that it's not even John Harvard. The second lie is written below, John Harvard, founder, but he didn't found the university. The third lie is that Harvard was not established in 1638, it was established 2 years earlier. So that's the statue of three lies.